Welcome to Harris Beckenham. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the A-Level PE team. The A-Level PE team is made up of Mr. Boylan, who is coordinator of sixth form, Miss Saunders, who's 2IC of PE, Mr. Shon, who's in charge of raising the standards for Year 7, and Miss Mullard, who's assistant principal of sixth form. A-Level PE is comprised of 3 theory units. The first unit is the physiological factors. This includes anatomy and physiology. In anatomy and physiology, we cover topics such as the skeletal system, respiratory system, and the cardiovascular system. Next is exercise physiology. During exercise physiology, we study drugs, injuries, and sports nutrition. And lastly, biomechanics, which includes projectiles, motion, and force. This makes up 30% of the total A level. The second unit is the psychological factors. This includes skill acquisition. In skill acquisition, we study information processing, guidance, feedback, and the skills continuums. Next is sports psychology. Here, we study the social learning theory, theories of aggression, and the attribution theory. This is 20% of our total A level. The third unit is socio-cultural. This is comprised of sport and society, and includes the emergence and evolution of modern-day sport and global sporting events, along with contemporary issues, which includes the ethics and deviance in sport along with commercialisation. Again, this is 20% of our total A level. So as you can see, the theory aspect of the A level PE contributes to 70% of our total grade. This 70% is assessed via 3 separate written exam papers, ranging from 1 hour to 2 hours in length. There is a range of exam questions going from 1 mark to a 20-mark essay in some of the topics.
In addition to the theory, you will be assessed in a practical performance, either in the role of a performer or as a coach. The sports include football, netball, basketball, gymnastics, rugby, etc. There are a few more sports you can be assessed in. And the activity needs to be from the OCR approved list. The assessment focus on looks at your effectiveness in sport, not just the skills required for the sport, but your overall effectiveness. If you select to be a coach, you will be required to produce a coaching plan, and this forms 15% of the overall grade. After this, you're also assessed performing what's called an EAPI, so it's an evaluating and analysing performance for improvement verbal coursework unit. This requires you to draw upon knowledge, understanding and skills learnt through the course of study. You then analyse and evaluate a peer's performance in a sport from the approved list. So for example, you would be required to highlight strengths and weaknesses of the performance in relation to skills, tactics, fitness and overall success, devise an action plan for an identified weakness with timetables and progressive practices, whilst also applying a wide range of relevant theoretical knowledge and concepts. This forms the final 15% of the grade. Both of the elements above are filmed and submitted to the exam board and are subject to moderation.
The entry requirements for A-Level PE are a Grade 5 in English language, a Grade 6 or above in GCSE PE, and also a Grade 6 in biology. Lastly, you must be actively involved in a sport outside the academy.
The sports industry is one of the fastest growing sectors in modern society. You only have to look at the rise of performance analysis in the Premier League football or the growth of the Olympic and Paralympic movements to see that with the right qualifications and the right passion for sport, there are a huge number of exciting opportunities open to talented young people. A-Level PE represents the first steps towards these opportunities. With a good grounding in a wide range of sports disciplines, our students go on to study sport-related courses at a number of the UK's leading universities. Possible career pathways for those with A-Level PE include match analysts, nutritionists, journalists, sports development officers, physiotherapists and many more.
We hope you choose A-Level PE next year. In the meantime, please enjoy our lecture on the history of football. It's mob football to Premier League.
Hello everybody, welcome to my lecture. This is Mr. Boylan here. What I want to do today is I want to talk to you about from mob football to the Premier League, a brief history of the beautiful game. Those people that know me fairly well know that I absolutely love football. It is my life. Big Arsenal fan. I know for my sins, we're not very good at the moment, but look, I could talk about football all day. What I want from this lecture today is two things. First of all, I want you to hopefully learn something. I'd like to teach you something about football that you didn't maybe know. I'll be honest with you, there's a couple of things when researching this, there's a couple of things I actually found out myself I didn't know. And second thing is I'd like you to do some research after this and try and get a bit more knowledge, go a little bit deeper and send me your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think of this lecture. Any feedback is greatly received. Right, let's get on with it. Okay, so origins of football. So a lot of people think that football was actually made or developed, created in England. Not the case. The first example of a team game involving a ball was over 3,000 years ago. The ball was actually made out of rock. Not sure about that. It was from a place called Mesoamerica. So if you look at the map there, it's between North and South America. So somewhere in the region between Mexico and Costa Rica. And the ball would symbolize the sun, and the captain of the losing team would actually be sacrificed to the gods. So yeah, you don't really want to be losing that game, do you? And there's a famous quote there by Bill Shankly, who's one of the most famous Liverpool managers ever, who said that some people think football is a matter of life and death. I don't like that attitude. I can assure you it's much more important than that. So that's just an example, of football is a matter of life and death, and at times I've been guilty of getting caught up in the game and, especially when Arsenal lose, having the ump for the weekend or whatever, but, it's only a game, isn't it? Right, football evolving. So we're going from Mesoamerica all the way over to China in the 3rd and 2nd century BC. Actually, a game called Cuju, I think I pronounced that correctly. And they've evolved now as a round ball in a square, not a rectangle as we know it today, but in a square. It then later spread to Japan, so it's now starting to go a little bit kind of more globally. And then in ancient Greece in the 7th century, the ball was made of shreds of leather filled with hair. So it's going from a rock now to shreds of leather, more to kind of what we're used to these days. And then later spread to ancient Rome, played in the arenas. And then Roman culture actually brought it to Britannica, which in the old days was what we were called, Great Britain was called Britannica. So it actually came from the Roman culture. Right, there we go. I want you to have a little look at that picture on the right there. Okay, because that's going to help to explain what I'm about to say. So football came to England in the 12th century. And the games that resemble football were played on meadows and in rows and in the towns in England. Okay, what you're actually allowed to do, you're actually allowed to kick and punch people. You're allowed to do what you liked. Much, much more rough, much more violent. You could give someone an uppercut if you wanted to, no problem. No referee in them days. And it involved the towns versus other towns. And hundreds of people beating each other up all for a game of football. And the only rule was you weren't allowed to murder anyone. That was the only rule. Crazy, really. And the idea was to get the ball to the other team's church. That was the goal, if you like. So you get to the church, you win, job done. I can't read that bit. My writing's in the way. I can't remember what that says, but yeah, football, mob football. If you ever hear the term mob football, you know where it's from now. That picture helps to kind of paint 1,000 words. Right, so your modern day mob football. Mob football actually still goes on today in a place called Ashbourne in Derbyshire, and it's played on Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday. Okay, you've got two teams. One is called the Uppards, and they're north of Hemmoor Brook. You've got the Downards, and they're the people born south of the river. So it's north versus south. And the idea is each team is actually going to attempt to carry the ball back to their own goal to win. So not necessarily with their feet. They're going to throw it. They're going to beat each other up. It's quite good fun to watch. So what I've done is I'll put a link at the bottom there because I've had some trouble playing this video. I will play the video. If it doesn't work, just pause this. Click on the link. Yeah, I'll see you in about 3 minutes. It's quite good fun to watch. Okay, now I hope you enjoyed that video. I think that's a bit more of a kind of a tame version of mob football because it well, from all accounts, obviously I wasn't alive then, but from all accounts, it was really, really rough. And, people were getting hurt left, right, and centre. Obviously, nowadays, with that kind of mob football, you've got lots of cameras around, lots of police around, so people aren't kind of going to go as crazy as they perhaps would have done. Right, well, that's just a little example of mob football. Okay, so we're starting to now go through the ages. We're starting to move away from mob football. What we have now is football is banned. I know, I can't believe it. Too many deaths, too many people are dying because things just got out of hand. There were no rules, people hurting each other, and too many people were dying. So, as a consequence, there was damage to towns and buildings, churches were getting destroyed, and people were just saying, no, enough is enough. However, it did return to the streets of London in the 17th century. And in 1835, it was banned again. But in the public schools, things were being developed. And this is the key point I want you to remember, in the public schools. Okay, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And there was no difference between rugby and football. Okay, this is why when you look at a rugby team's badge, it usually says Rugby Football Union, and we'll go into why in just a second. So, football as we know it is now starting to evolve. We're now starting to think about the public schools. So, football at this point in time is only played in schools, and it's usually played by Rugby and Eton. So they're the two big schools, kind of two big public schools in England. Eton, the Royals actually went there, so Prince William and Prince Harry went there. Rugby school, yeah, massive school, one of the best kind of schools in the country. And then a rugby school, you're allowed to pick the ball up at this point in time, okay? This is where rugby comes from. However, at Eton, they're saying, no, you can't use your hands anymore. We're going to do it with our feet only. So look at the difference. Rugby is saying, yeah, you can pick the ball up, but Eton are saying no. The game of rugby was called the running game. But at Eton, it was called the dribbling game. So now we're starting to see how both sports are trying to branch off in different directions, okay? However, in 1863, the FA is formed. So the FA, as we know today, the Football Association, they were formed, and then rules started to be formed. So we're now starting to think about, right, let's get away from this mob football. Let's start having some proper rules so that people don't get hurt, people don't get killed. You're not allowed to carry the ball at this point, okay? No, that's a completely different game. Size and the weight of ball are standardised because you could go from one town and the ball be massive, go to another town and the ball is really small. There was no standardisation. But at this point in time, we're starting to say, yep, you can use a size 5 football. It's going to be this weight wherever we go and play. And at this meeting, this is where football, association football as we call it, and rugby were actually divided into two different sports, two different codes. So rugby went one direction, football went the other direction, or association football as it's actually called. All right. However, still no limit on the size of the teams. So you could have as many players as you wanted per side, didn't matter. You could have 15 against 10. We haven't decided that yet. There were no kits. So how are you supposed to tell who's on what team? And then quite laughably, heading is not invented yet because players were wearing caps. So you probably see the old gentlemen, with the moustaches and the caps, didn't want to head the ball because they're wearing their hats. So it's not been invented yet. Right, rugby versus football. If you look at the two pictures there, you can see quite a distinctive difference, I think. As the two sports divided, so did the classes. And you've probably heard this loads of times, but rugby was played by the middle and the upper classes, the gentlemen. Whereas football was played by the lower class peasants, okay? Usually played by people up north because they were deemed to be more kind of peasants. And the people down south, in and around London, Oxford, that kind of area, were deemed to be kind of the middle and the upper classes. Okay, now getting to where we're kind of thinking about these days, how football is kind of made these days. Sheffield. Which one? Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United? Who knows? But they were formed in 1857. I tried to find out, but nobody knows whether it's Wednesday or Sheffield United. The oldest professional football club, Notts County, made in 1862. Bit of knowledge for you. Notts County were the first team I ever saw play, actually. I saw them versus Arsenal at Highbury in 1991, I think. I know, back in the 90s. We won 2-0. How's my knowledge? I think Ian Wright and Alan Smith scored. We won 2-0. Yeah, that was my first ever game. Loved it. I was only about 6, 7 at the time, whatever it was, and I loved it. And that kind of got me hooked on football. Okay, massive date, 8th of September 1888. This is the formation of the first ever league, and it kicked off. All right, have a look at these teams. So they were from the Midlands of the North. You got Villa, still around today. Everton, Stoke, who later became Stoke City, same difference. Blackburn Rovers, Preston North End, Accrington or Accrington Stanley. If you know about that advert back in the days, you'll know what I'm on about there. Bolton Wanderers, Burnley, Notts County, Derby County, and West Brom and Wolves. Right, there you go. A little bit of trivia for you. The first ever champions of any football league, Preston North End. They smashed it. They won the league by 11 points over Villa. But if you look at kind of them teams now, what you'll find is that very, very few of them are in the Premier League anymore. So how many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I stand corrected. There's 5. So just under half of them are still in the Premier League. But what we notice here in 1888 is that most or all of them are from the Midlands of the North, because the Southerners weren't involved in football just yet. Okay, and why was that? Primarily it's because of trains. What do you mean it's because of trains? Well, let me explain. So it's not until industrialisation happened and the train lines were made that people could travel between games. Nobody had cars back then because they weren't invented. So people had kind of horses and carts. As football was a peasant's game, nobody could afford a horse and cart. So they had to wait until the train lines were made before we could start playing teams from other kind of towns. And then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it actually spreads globally. Okay, so now we're not playing the neighbouring town. We're actually going cross-county, maybe cross-region to go and play other teams. And then we turn professional. Okay, so first international match. Bit more bonus trivia for you. England versus Scotland, 0-0 in 1871. We start our first ever international with a ball draw. Oh dear, terrible. Eh? And then your first international tournament was actually between England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland in 1883. There you go. So that's where the kind of birth of the World Cup and the Euros kind of happens. In 1885, football was made professional, so people actually doing it for a living. And then 1871, FA Cup was born. Okay, the winners were Wanderers. You're thinking, right, who's Wanderers? Not Bolton Wanderers, not Wolverhampton Wanderers. They're actually from Upper Norwood. What? They're from Upper Norwood? I know. I didn't know that too earlier on until I did my research. So they're not about anymore. They used to play in the Southern Combined Counties League back in 1871, but for whatever reason, I couldn't find what reason it was, they're no longer with us. But there you go, bit of bonus knowledge for you from Upper Norwood. And actually, they won it the year after. So the first 2 FA Cups were actually won by Wanderers. It wasn't called the FA Cup back then, it was called the FA Vase, I think, or something like that. But it was the birth of the FA Cup. All right. FIFA, so as you know, FIFA are the organisation, or the world organisation, who looks after all the individual FAs of every country. They weren't made until 1904. Okay, then we're starting to get the stadiums being built. So if you look at some of the old-fashioned stadiums that are still in and around the Premier League now, you've got Goodison Park, built in 1892, Anfield, 1884, where Liverpool play. You've got Molineux, where Wolves play, 1889. And then I couldn't help it. I do miss this place. Look at that architecture. Beautiful. Highbury Arsenal Football Club. Still there to this day. It's a listed building. They're not allowed to knock it down. It still breaks my heart every time I see that. As good, as nice as the new stadium is, it doesn't have the heart and soul that place did. Absolutely love Highbury. I've got a friend actually who's got an apartment in Highbury because they've actually made it into flats. If you get a chance after this, go onto Google and put in Arsenal Stadium now, and you can actually see that they've kept the pitch in the middle. They've put like a flower bed or wherever it is, and some shrubs and stuff in there. But they've actually sold all of the apartments off. You can actually look over it. And they're not allowed to get rid of the grass because too many people's ashes have been scattered there. Okay, have a little look. It's quite good what they've done with it. In a nutshell, what a beautiful stadium. Right, here we go then. We're now starting to think about the globalisation, World Cups. So, as technology is evolving, airplanes are now being made, so the game is now worldwide. We can go to other countries. The first World Cup was in 1930 in Uruguay. They also won it. And then the birth of a competition called the European Cup, 1955 to 1991. Bonus points if you know what it's called these days. I'll give you a clue. Look at the trophy over there. It's actually the kind of original name for the Champions League. And for those people who know their football, if you look at that picture there on the left-hand side, you've got Graham Souness, Sky Sports pundit. You've got Kenny Dalglish there, and then you've got Hansen. What's his name? Used to be on Match of the Day, Alan Hansen. Because back then, any Liverpool fans will know Liverpool absolutely dominated everything in the sort of 70s, early 80s. And we'll go into that in just a second. So as you can see now, globalisation, planes, we're starting to travel worldwide. Football is now starting to get to a more global audience. However, disaster happens. What used to happen back in the day when I used to start watching football was football fans could just turn up at any day and go into the stadium. Didn't need to buy a ticket. You just turn up and enter. You go through the turnstiles. But because football hooliganism was rife, it's everywhere. You had your firms. You had West Ham who had a firm. They were called the ICF, I think. Everybody knows Millwall had a firm, and they used to meet up and have big punch-ups and stuff. And what the FA did was the FA thought it was a good idea to put these fences in the way to stop the fans running on the pitch and attacking the players and attacking each other. As you can see from that picture, that wasn't a good idea, was it? Because let me tell you now, I've been one of them people at the front there, and as soon as 2 or 3 people step forward, it has a knock-on effect. And what used to happen was everybody used to kind of get knocked everywhere. And if you're pinned up against that fence there, you've got no chance. Okay. 1985, we've got a disaster called Heysel disaster. That was involving Liverpool. Liverpool fans actually got blamed. 35 fans died. 85, again, not a good year for football. Somebody apparently dropped a cigarette at Bradford City Football Club. Massive fire, 56 people died. That's actually why you're not allowed to smoke at football grounds anymore, because the stadium was made out of wood, but obviously nowadays it's made out of concrete. Again, another safety feature. And then probably the most famous out of all of them, you've got 1989 in Hillsborough, where that picture's from. 96 people died in the stadium. They're all crushed at the front. If you want to look at it in kind of more detail, so tragic. There's loads of documentaries on YouTube about Hillsborough and kind of the causes. No one's ever been charged with it. They do, or lots of fingers are being pointed at the police commander called David Duckenfield. He's so far avoided any sort of prosecution as far as I'm aware, but there is an ongoing investigation, police investigation. So watch this space. Point I'm trying to make is things are changing in football. And as a consequence, what happened there, they decided to ban football clubs from 85 to 1990. Sorry, Palace fans. What would have happened if we hadn't got the ban is Palace would have actually been in like the old version of the Champions League, because they finished second that year, I believe. I think they finished behind Liverpool. I may be wrong. That's my knowledge from 20, 30 years ago. But rumour has it, or there's been speculation that because all the English teams were dominating kind of European football, you had Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa, all winning European Cups, that all the other nations got a bit jealous and just used it as an excuse to ban the English teams. I mean, look, we'll never know, but, the skeptic in me says that's possibly, could have happened. But because lots of different disasters happened in such a short space of time, they felt it necessary to ban English teams. Well, also happening now is all the football stadiums now are all becoming all-seater. You've got to buy a ticket so they know exactly how many people are in the stadium. We can't overfill the stadium. There's no fencing and there's no smoking. So if some disaster did happen, you could always run on the pitch to avoid being crushed. No smoking. Obviously, not only is it bad for your health, but it just takes away the risk of a fire. Okay, so you can see how football's evolving. Then, as you know it, the big football explosion. Right, 1992, Premier League was made. You guys won't know football like I did back in the day, but basically what happened was there was a breakaway league from the big clubs. So the big sort of 10, 15 clubs all got together and said, I tell you what, we can make a bit of money here. Let's make our own Premier League. Let's leave everybody else behind. Bit of trivia for you. Man United won the first ever Premier League. And then 92, 93, the Champions League was made to replace the European Cup. So they've kind of rebranded it. Again, bit of bonus knowledge for you. Barcelona are champions in the first year. Right, so here's the key question. Well, yeah, so what? Sky kind of invented the Premier League. Why do they do it? In a word, money. All right. All of the kind of directors of all the football clubs and Rupert Murdoch, who owned Sky, realised that there was a need for people to watch football. Because back then, you wouldn't have football on telly all day, every day, like you do now. I could turn on the telly and watch any game from any country pretty much any minute of the day. They used to have one game a week, if that. And what they realised was, there was loads of money to be made. Hang on a second, if we paid all the clubs to show all the games, then we can get the fans to buy monthly subscriptions and actually make a lot of money. And what actually happened there, if you look at my little graph there, in 1992 to 97, Sky Sports paid £191 million, okay, for the 5 years. And what's happened is, as the years have gone on, have a look at how much money the TV companies have pumped into Premier League football. So we've gone from 191 million all the way up to 5.1 billion pounds per year. Over the per deal. So you work it out. What's that? 1 point something billion pound a year. It's ridiculous. So it just shows how much people are willing to kind of pay to watch this football. Have a look at the branding there. You've got Vinnie Jones, who played for Wimbledon. You've got Brian Robson, from Man United. Looks a bit different to how it does today. But in a nutshell, Sky Sports made loads of money. Right. A lot of people don't realise this, but within the payments structure of Sky Sports, what they actually do is they actually pay each club the same amount to a point. All right. Now, this is the 18-19 season. I couldn't find a more up-to-date one. But what you'll find is that if you look at where it says equal share there, each one of the clubs there gets £34.3 million just from TV money. Okay. They also get, well, let's look at Man City there. They've got another 30 million for facility fees, as opposed to Huddersfield, who only got 12 million. Only 12 million. But what you'll find is, look at City, 151 million nearly, total payments. And then look at down at poor Huddersfield Town, they only got 97 million. And you'll hear people say that the rich clubs will get richer and the gap will widen. Now, this is why. Now, let me explain why that happens. Think about it. If you're broadcasting the rights over to Africa, to Asia, wherever it is, are you going to want to watch Fulham versus Huddersfield, or are you going to want to watch Man City? Of course, you're going to watch Man City. And then there's a knock-on effect with a sponsorship, because if you look at all the half-time and kind of shirts and everything at the moment, it's all full of betting companies, it's all full of sponsorship, adverts are everywhere. So the more people that watch the telly, the more the advertisers like it, pay Sky more, so then they put Man City on more often, Liverpool on more often, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, United, because they've got a bigger fan base. So it's a bit unfair, that, I think. What's that, 54 million, 55 million difference? If you did that every season, it will soon add up. So, yeah, I just thought I'd kind of highlight that fact. And if you also look, Huddersfield are only on telly 10 times as opposed to Liverpool are on 29 times. So each time they're actually going to make more money, and that gap is going to widen. Have a little look at how much it's going to cost the average fan to watch sport. Okay. So you've got your Premier League, you've got your Champions League, you've got FA Cup, EFL, and all your England matches. So it's going to cost on average £1,000 a year to watch all of the matches if you wanted to. Now that is astronomical, isn't it? You know, you think, what's that? £50 a month for Sky, £23 a month for BT. That's ridiculous. You know, and unfortunately, this is why people are going to kind of illegal streams. You know, it's not right. Don't do it. But this is why they're doing it, because, you know, is the Premier League going to price itself out? So no, I'll let you make that decision. What's also happened as a consequence of Sky and the Premier League being formed is wages. Right, have a little look at 1984-85 season there. Your average Division 1, so that was like the old Premier League, the average Division 1 salary was £24,000 a year. Okay, now that's not a bad wage, but it's not the kind of ridiculous money that they get in these days. I could only find the figures from 14-15, but the average Premier League player was getting £1.7 million a year. Average. That's not your best players, that's just average, which is a ridiculous amount of money, isn't it? And that's all because Sky is pumping more money into the clubs. The clubs have got more money to spend. They want to attract the best players. The best players are going, well, okay, well, yeah, I'll come and play for you. Give me the most money. So it's that kind of knock-on effect. Now, there are some major impacts that you might not realise that's happened from kind of Sky, the Premier League, and kind of the globalisation of football. I've got a few pictures here. I'll just give you a few seconds to try and work out what you think they are, and I'll talk through them in just a second. All right, let's talk about the equipment. Right, so that football there, that's one of the older footballs, but all the footballs today are made a certain way to actually allow the air to flow through the ball, to make the ball move, to make it more difficult for goalkeepers to stop shots. If goalkeepers can't stop the shots, they get more goals, which means the game's more entertaining, which means more people will watch the game, which means more money will be pumped into football. Sky make more money. Also, have a little look at the boots there. If you compare the boots back to kind of even in sort of the 80s and 90s, they always used to wear black boots. Now you're wearing luminous colours, you know, because people like Nike and Adidas have realised, right, I tell you what, let's make them as flash as possible. Let's get our brand out there. Let's pay Lionel Messi £50 million a year to go and wear, you know, luminous orange boots. And that's all because of the broadcasting. Nike have realised that if lots of people see Ronaldo, Messi, people like these wearing these boots, they're going to go out and want to replicate that, try and be like them, and buy the same boots. And again, they're going to make lots and lots of money. It's also had a massive effect on the rules of the game. Okay, and I've got a few examples here. So I've got, who's that? Is that Allison there? I think that's Allison. Right, he's in goal. And the reason I put that picture there is there's actually a 6-second rule. So the broadcasters and the people that are paying the big money have actually gone up to the FA and said, no, we want to make the game more exciting. The ball needs to be in play. So what should happen is goalies should only hold the ball for 6 seconds. Some of them are holding it for 15, 20 seconds, but that's up to the referee. The little picture there where I've got the arrow, they've also adapted the rules where you're not allowed to pass the ball back to your goalkeeper. Back when I first started playing football, you could pass it back to the goalie. But the big wigs who are paying the big money said, no, we want to make it more exciting. We want to make the game have more goals. So now they're putting goalies under pressure, you know, trying to hit the ball into the attackers or trying to fluff their clearance or whatever to try and make it more entertaining. We've also got goal line technology now, so that more people are talking about it. So we've got more goals, it's more exciting. We've got VAR, which is an absolute disgrace, by the way. Do me a favour, drop me your comments on VAR. I'm interested to kind of hear your thoughts, but here's my thoughts. Absolute load of rubbish. Get rid of it. I enjoy the controversy of having a moan on Monday morning when Arsenal have lost yet again because of a dodgy penalty decision or whatever. But let's make no bones about it. Sky, broadcasters, all of the people who kind of show football have had a major, major impact on football. The rules, the equipment, and just everything really. Other major impacts as well, like I said earlier on, adverts are absolutely everywhere. You look at something like, next time you watch a game, watch Sky Sports and actually listen to how much analysis there is at halftime and just after the game. There's very, very little analysis that goes on. For a 15-minute halftime, I reckon there's about 11 minutes of adverts. It's ridiculous. Why? Because Betfair, Paddy Power, Coral, all these people are paying Sky loads and loads of money to show their adverts because they know millions and millions of people around the world are watching it. So, you know, it's a no-brainer for Sky. Sky have paid out all their money, but they're getting all them. Yeah, sorry, let me say that again. So Sky have paid out all that money to be able to get the rights to show the TV, the game on TV, but they're getting the money back from monthly subscriptions and from, more importantly, from the advertisers. All right, have a look at Messi there. He's covered in advertisements, isn't he? Qatar Airways, Nike, Ronaldo there, sorry, he's got Fly Emirates on his shirt. You know, it's massive. I've also put in the middle there, you know, I said about all the games being showed. I mean, look, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, if I wanted to, I could watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. Back in the old days when I first started watching football, that would have taken me 9 weeks to watch that. But yeah, there you go. More games they show, more adverts they show, more money they make. Okay, right. That concludes my kind of my football lecture on how things have evolved. I hope you've enjoyed it. What I'd like to do from here is I'd like to do one of 3 things. All right, I really want you to. Well, I hope I've inspired you to kind of deepen your understanding on the following. What I'd like you to do, one of 3 things, either on no more than 1 page, evaluate the frequency, duration and medium of advertisements for gambling and other risky products in commercial and public service broadcasts of English Premier League football. I've put a journal on there, and what they do is they investigate whether the amount of adverts they put onto Sky and stuff, does it affect people's gambling habits? Is it risky for them? And I want you to come up with a kind of argument or just investigate whether that's the case. If you don't like the idea of that one, have a look at number 2. Research and evaluate on no more than 1 page whether you think Sky Sports has been a good or a bad thing for the game. But justify your answers. Do you think it's been good? Do you think it's bad? Don't sit in the middle. Give me your kind of good or bad. All right. Number 3, investigate the events which occurred at Hillsborough and submit your verdict to me stating who you think was to blame. So have a little look at a documentary, or there's lots of stuff on iPlayer about Hillsborough. You know, really, really tragic. You know, it's really sad, but I want you to kind of investigate and tell me who do you think was to blame. I've got my thoughts. I'm not going to tell you who they are. But yeah, if you could email that back to me ASAP, I'll be ever so grateful. And that pretty much concludes my session today. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I've tried to make it as kind of interactive and knowledgeable as possible. Yeah, any feedback, much greatly received. Yeah, if you didn't enjoy it, please also tell me as well, and I'll make the changes for next time. Okay, looking forward to your responses. Thanks a lot.